Yes, I can feel it! The power coursing through my veins, burning inside me!
Hello everyone, Skippy here, and welcome to One Piece episode 998, directed by Kenichi Takeshita and supervised by Shuichi Ito. After last week was a clear sacrifice, it'll be interesting to see how this week plays out, and hopefully for the better, as Kenichi Takeshita's atmospheric board in tandem with Shuichi Ito's on-model but still uniquely quirky corrections look pretty solid for what the preview does want to show us, already giving us more to chew on than the preview for last week and the episode itself combined, which leads to this episode hopefully promising a whole lot more. With cuts that are straight up not being shown in order to be saved for the final product, will episode 998 rebound after the buffer that 997 gave it? Let's get ready to run and find out. This episode covers pages 5 through 14 of chapter 988, and with that unfortunately does bring on some pacing issues with Shinobu's rescue of Momo being greatly extended to lengths that I'm not sure I'm comfortable with, and a brief flashback to Luffy's invasion of the wedding and the cake within it back in Whole Cake Island, along with slightly short ones to more recent stuff. But I feel like this episode gets by fairly well outside of all that, because when the canon content is majorly a force of nature, it's done pretty well outside of all the aforementioned Shinobu stuff, and features some small but respected additions like the live floor gang beginning to fight, and then some more bulky ones like Sanji trying out all his Germa powers on King and failing, before an anime original chase scene begins that we'll discuss at length later. Which all helps the episode a bit on the adaptation end in spite of its shortcomings, and I think that makes it so I have no issue really forgiving them, because it's no doubt taxing on the staff to adapt an episode with only 10 pages, but 10 pages that are mostly action at that. And of course the music choices end up being solid overall, and the overall ambience from Takeshita's direction does set a nice overall feeling for it as a whole that I feel is only made better once the major parts of it all kick in. It may have had to sacrifice some stuff like last episode did, but it turned out alright in the end in my book. As mentioned before, Takeshita's board here is once again one that attributes a lot of those atmospheric charms that make up a lot of his work, with a lot of cool rotations and other camera pans and zooms being aplenty, being backed up by a huge sense of scale that does the overall roomy and huge nature of Onigashima justice for even the smallest of battles, and helps the raid feel a lot more grand than it has so far. Not to say that other directors haven't succeeded in doing that, but there's something about how Takeshita does it all that remains pretty solid in my book when compared to some of those efforts, helping to distract you from the bouts of reused animation that are obviously there to help the health of the production but are used quite well regardless, and are mixed together so seamlessly with all the new stuff that it doesn't really matter all that much, with the new bits of animation standing out massively like Huang Yang's short but sweet and smeary second clash with Yamato and Ulti that follows Archie's efforts from a few weeks ago quite well, and Chu Young-Su's excellent and almost jaw-dropping chase scene between King and Sanji that utilizes 3D backgrounds to help sell the scale of Onigashima as they zoom through the live floor, which makes it one of Chu's biggest cuts to date and one that has helped immensely due to his own timing and spacing, with it transitioning from smooth to snappy whenever it's needed. Combined with the solid, if not a bit funny and flat corrections from Shuichi Ito, and 998 ends up getting a pass, I'd say, even in spite of its issues. It's obvious that when planning the raid in the upcoming 1000th episode, some measures had to be taken even in otherwise solid episodes like this, so it is what it is. But even then, I found it a lot better than last week's episode, even if it had to work within similar guidelines, and I think my issues with it might end up being nothing to some. It's just how I feel after all. But as we move forward into next week's episode 999, it'll be interesting to see what that episode ends up accomplishing on its own. Being right before the big 1000th episode is certainly no joke, so the addition of Supervisor Toshio Deguchi with Hirotaka Ito does likely mean it'll be a bit more conservative visually, but the board and direction from Yusuke Suzuki looks as insanely dynamic and cool as I've come to expect from his recent offerings, so maybe it'll end up serving its purpose still and doing the content as much justice as it can, and very well at that. Anyways, guys, that's it for now. I'm Skippy. And that added cutaway to Sasaki after Big Mom's attack was fucking hilarious.